Well, hello there and welcome to the latest edition of About Small Business. In this edition, we're going to be chatting to an accountant, Alison Smith of Mark Stanley Accountants. Now, Alison, I remember when I first engaged your services, Alison is actually my accountant. When I first engaged your services, I rang Mark Stanley Accountants and I was expecting a Mark Stanley.
Yes.
And clearly I didn't get one.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, a lot of people ask this. I think when I started the company many moons ago, I was very conscious of not wanting to look like I was just a woman on her own. I probably might have done things differently now, but this is going back probably 20 years now. I wanted it to not be Alison Smith Accountancy. There was probably quite a few of those, very common name. And my husband had a company at the time, and his company had Mark Stanley in it because that's his middle names.
Right.
So I thought, I'm going to get on that bandwagon and call it Mark Stanley Accountancy. And it just sounded a bit more... a little bit bigger. I could hide behind it a little bit.
Right.
And at the time I felt more comfortable doing that.
Okay.
Nowadays I think being a bit older, being a bit more confident, I might not have done that, but I've just stuck with the name and it seems to work, and it's a question that a lot of people ask, and something to talk about, I suppose, with people. But
and now they know.
And now they know, and it's got, we have quite a few clients now. We built it up quite well, so it hasn't done me any harm.
Oh, fantastic! Just interesting that you mentioned about not want to be like sort of a single woman on her own.
Yes.
Is that because the accountancy, the trade is quite male dominated, or?
No, I don't think it is. My experience is it's pretty 50-50. However, saying that, I go back a few years, and when I first started out, it was male dominated at the top.
Yeah.
So it was probably 50-50, people training and what have you, and being accountants. But partners of firms tended to be men. In fact, I've never worked for, that's not quite true. I've worked for one woman, a partner, and the rest have been men. It was. I think it was more me not being confident, as confident, and I did feel at the time that I think it was sort of not new being online, but it was new-ish to me, and my details being out there with I was working from home at the time as well when I first started the business. I just thought, female. My address online, I felt a bit exposed.
Yeah.
And I think as a woman, you do feel a bit differently maybe to men. I can't speak for how men feel, but I think you can feel a little bit more vulnerable.
I think it's interesting. I mean, in my job, I have to travel around the country, and I'm often staying in sort of travel lodges and things like that. And sometimes I'll go out into an area, or I'll pull up at night time, and the hotel is maybe let's just say it's not as nice as it looks in the pictures.
Yeah.
And I do think if I wouldn't be necessarily happy with my wife or daughter staying there. Yeah. And there are these little differences, I think, that we do kind of need to acknowledge. And
there's definitely differences, and I can only speak from my experience, but I'm always aware of my situation. When I was working from home and I had new clients come to my home, I did worry. Luckily, I had no bad experiences, but you do worry that you think, well, I'm in my own home, somebody's coming into my home that I do not know.
Yeah.
If something kicks off, I look at escape routes, or what do I do?
Someone's not happy
or
about the tax bill.
If I felt a slap, well, that does happen. But thankfully, it's never come to physical violence. But I think women do have to think of these things, whereas men don't necessarily have to, or to that degree. Maybe they do to a certain level, but it's certainly something that I thought about. And when we opened the business, opened the office, and that was something, that was a reason to have an office rather than working from home, was I felt a bit safer in this environment. Even if I was on my own in the office, there's other people around, and it's, you know, there's, I do feel a lot safer here, and it's a much more professional environment. And
it's interesting because I mean, certainly this isn't necessarily the direction I'd sort of intended for the conversation to take, but I do think this is really interesting. In your view, do you think that kind of situation, do you think it's getting better or getting worse? And the reason I'm asking that is because in a number of news reports, we're seeing that a lot of young men now are opting for, shall we say, more traditional views, and women, on the other hand, kind of, let's just say, a sort of perhaps rejecting that view. So there's kind of a diversion at the minute.
I think it's, I personally haven't come across anybody like that, and they'd get short shrift if they did. I find it amazing that we seem to be going backwards, and possibly that's something to do with women being more outspoken, that men seem to be having this backlash. And I hope it's a minority. I think social media sort of perpetuates that view to young boys. I've got a son myself, and thankfully he sees it for what it is. But I think there are kids out there, and older men,
absolutely,
that have these misogynistic views, and I find it really quite surprising, really, in this day and age. You know, it's a conversation I've had with a lot of people, that you hope as time moves on that we progress as a society.
You would hope so.
And yet we see that kind of thing happening, but we also see in America where almost things seem to be going backwards, and I find it very surprising that.
I mean, I've got two daughters, and that's been quite interesting, the way that I now see things differently. From how I was, and now it's because of my daughters. It's like I'm very much thinking about how they would be in any situations. I mentioned that when I'm travelling, would I be happy for my daughters to be able to do this? And it's tough, and I can see from the male perspective, they're feeling that. I think if they're no longer the breadwinners, that can have a, because I think society does frown upon that a lot as well. Then it can have an impact, and you're going to kind of lash out at the most convenient target.
I think so, and I think really we need to be thinking about how to educate girls and boys when they're younger.
To be sensitive to each other's situations.
Be sensitive to each other, and to treat people with kindness. And it sounds a bit crass, that, but it I wish we did. I see a lot more rudeness in society. I see it in my practice with clients recently, and that's nothing to do with misogyny, I hope. But I do find that we're not treating people with respect, and I think it is a minority still, thankfully. But we do need to educate people, I think, of how to talk to people and be kind and be polite, and you can't just say what you want. And in this TikTok generation, as we were talking about earlier, kids look at these things and think, they can be who they want to be, which is absolutely great, but that comes with a responsibility as well. And you can be who you want, but you've got to still consider other people. And it's still not right to be rude to people. It
does frustrate me when I see online people, you can't say anything anymore. It's like you can say whatever you want. You just can't say whatever you want without consequences. If I walked up to someone in a pub who was 7 foot square and told him he was ugly, I'd likely be looking at at repercussions.
But I think people say that you can't say anything anymore. but I think people do say much more than they used to.
Absolutely.
And because this, it may be, I mean, I'm an older generation. I wasn't brought up with things being online, but I think social media, and a lot of people blame social media, and I think social media is fantastic for a lot of things.
Yeah.
I use social media, and I like looking at stuff on social media, but if you believe everything that you see, you're going down the wrong road, because there's a lot on there that's nasty and horrible, and so we're in transitionary times, I think, for a lot of things, and it's interesting, but if we go down the wrong road as a society, I think we're in trouble.
Just to kind of, I suppose, bring that back to your business, just out of curiosity, because obviously you're a woman in business working for herself. Were your parents more traditional in that role? I suppose where I'm wanting to get with this is like, so who was kind of your inspiration to start up on your own?
My husband, probably, actually. I mean, my parents brought, I'm one of 5 children, boys and girls, and my parents brought us up equally, and I can say that categorically. They didn't treat the boys differently to the girls, which I'm very thankful for. So that has probably given me a sort of personality where I think, well, I, if I want to do it, I can do it. And just being a woman doesn't make me not think that I can do something. But I don't think I would have set up my business without my husband. He gave me a lot of confidence, and he pushed me and said, if you think you can do it, I'll support you all the way. And I think you need that support for anybody to do something it's totally out of my comfort zone. I was an employee through and through. It was just circumstances, being made redundant, that made me think, well, shall I do it?
All right, so it was that.
Yeah, I set up the business beforehand as a sort of sideline when my son was young, and it was just sort of some extra money bringing in. But I got made redundant, and I thought, well, shall I work for somebody else again, or shall I set up my own company? And I did start doing working for somebody else, and actually she supported me. She was a woman on her own in business. She needed some help at the time, so I helped her grow her business, and at the same time she supported me growing mine. So it was quite a nice relationship, because when you set up an accountancy business, a lot of people either buy clients or they buy your practice. I did it. I didn't have the money to do that, and I didn't want to sort of borrow money to do that. So I did it organically. So it's not like opening a shop and day one everybody coming in and buying stuff. It's quite a slow burn, and I wasn't very good at selling myself on social media either. So a lot of people do that and do that very well. And and networking, I was absolutely pants at it. So my business grew very slowly, which was good for me, and it worked well when my son was younger, and that's just grown up steadily over the years. And I didn't really want to sort of suddenly have like 200 clients and think, oh, how the hell am I going to... I wanted to make sure that, I think when you suddenly have a business and you've got all these clients to serve, people get lost. Whereas I didn't want that. I didn't want to think I wasn't doing somebody giving somebody a good service. So it worked quite well for me. I can't remember the question that you asked.
Well, I mean, I was going to kind of take us back further than that, and just wondered why accountancy. How did you get into accountancy? Was it just you were someone at school who's good at maths?
Yes.
And
really, it really was. And I look back at that time and think, oh God, I was sort of, in those days, you didn't get the help that you might do now. We're talking 30 plus years ago. And it was sort of, oh, you're good at maths, yeah. And I wasn't really good. I was generally okay at everything, but maths was my strongest subject. And I was one of those kids who didn't really know what they wanted to do. And so I thought, I didn't really have that many options, as you think, well, what am I good at? So I did accounting and finance at degree level, and then just floated into it, really, and never did anything else.
Did you always enjoy it?
No. I hated my first job. In those days, Barry, you were talking about men being the partners in Apprentice. Oh, in those days, it was, they treated you like children, and there was a lot of... they didn't care about your mental health in those days, and it was just it wasn't very nice. And I my first job when I was training, the partners were just, they didn't talk to you. They didn't talk to anybody, any of the staff members. They thought they were God. Yeah. And sorry, I won't mention the name, Northallerton. And it was, I hated every single minute of it. And I did think, right, I don't want to be an accountant. And my life took a little bit of a different turn because we were living in North Yorkshire, and my husband got made redundant. And so he had some contacts in London because he'd worked in London before. So we decided it would be a great idea to go down to London. Right. And I thought, this is a great opportunity to get away from this firm and see what London gives me. And I got a job in an accountancy firm in just outside London, and it's completely different. And even though all the men were partners again, but they were much nicer and really encouraging and praise. Everybody needs a bit of praise especially when they're starting out. And it was a completely different experience, and I thought, oh, maybe this is all right. Maybe I can do something with this. And it turned out okay. But if I hadn't done that, sometimes you've got to take a bit of a risk in life. And London, although obviously we're back up north now, London was a great experience for me and my husband, and just getting, gave us confidence. Yeah. And meeting different people.
What made you come back then?
Do you know, when you live in the Northeast, I think a lot of people will say this, there's this pull to come back. And we wanted to get a dog, we wanted to start a family, and we didn't want to do it in London. No. And so we spent quite a few years down there.
I sometimes travel to London, and I love the visit. I love going down there and feeling the buzz. Yeah. But it just always feels nice to come back.
I wouldn't go down there now. If you said there's a great job, great opportunity in London, I wouldn't do it now. I think it's a different place now. But it was good at the time. When you're in your 20s, it's fantastic, imagine, social life. And it was great for us, I think, meeting different people. You meet a lot of people from all over Britain down there. Yeah. A lot of Northerners are down there, and you sort of... You make friends quite easily in a lot of ways. We did move outside London eventually. We're in the middle of London for very long, but it was a great experience, and it opened my mind a bit, because I think if you live, a lot of people, not everybody obviously, but a lot of people, if they live somewhere and they don't move out of the area, or they don't see anybody else or don't meet anybody else from different walks of life and different places, they get this sort of blinkered view of what the South's like. The Southerners are a different breed. To some degree they are. Londoners certainly. But I think if you step outside London a little bit, they just, everybody's just like you and me. Yeah, people are people. Yeah. And it did broaden my mind a lot. So it was a great experience, but it was great to come back up. We wanted to be a bit closer to family. Right. And we did get a dog, and we did start a family as well. So, it worked well for us.
Fantastic. And so that the confidence from going down there, that helps, obviously,
Definitely.
deciding to go on your own.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so when you came back up to start a family, is that then when you thought, because you mentioned you had a sideline, you started your business as a sideline.
Yeah.
Is that kind of when you came back up, you got your job,
Yeah.
and then started your sideline, and then the family came along, and
That's right.
things grew from there?
That's right. And it just started off with a few small clients initially.
Yeah.
And then, and it stayed like that for quite a long time, actually, until I decided, right, when I was made redundant, I thought, right, I've got a few clients, not enough to live on, but I've got a few, and let's do this.
Why do that rather than look for another job?
So I did have, I did a temporary job for a little while, over Christmas, doing tax returns, busy period for accountants and just helping them out.
That you've like the one you've just finished.
Yes, exactly. That was, less said about that, the better. And so I was helping them out, and I thought this will be a good test to see whether, because I'd been in my previous firm for 15 years.
Wow.
And loved it, and they just changed owners, and then things changed. They had a different direction. And I was, I thought, I was working for this other company. I thought, I'm not sure I want to work for somebody else again. They have a different mindset, different ways of doing things. The young bloods are coming up through the ranks, and I'm not sure I want to do this. And I thought, I think I can do this myself. And again, as I said before, my husband sort of said, you can do it. You can do it yourself. But yeah, I think I can. And it'll give me flexibility, which I needed at the time with my son being young. And I didn't want to, at that time, I didn't want to work full time with a rigid 9-to-5 job because, it's hard when you're a working mother. It's really difficult. So that gave me the flexibility. So that's why I didn't. I thought, I'll give it a try. If it doesn't work out, I can always get, a job working for somebody else. And it was worth a try, and I haven't really looked back. So I think that was 2012 when I decided to properly do it.
So 12 years then?
Yeah.
That's my maths there.
Yes, well done. Well done. Without a calculator as well.
I'm going to say, you know where I give my accounts to you. So. No, that's brilliant. To keep it going that way as well. I'm fascinated because I do know when you speak to people who are in a job, which is the majority of people, I think, there's a perception that doing something, taking that leap, I suppose that's kind of a bit loaded, calling it a leap. But was it something that you do perceive? You look back and think, God, I was brave.
Yeah, I do. I really do, and I'm quite proud of myself doing that, because I'm really. I mean, I'm really not that brave a person, to be honest. And I did need a bit of a push to do it. Yeah. I'm not the kind of person that would, stand at the top of the hill and tell everybody how fantastic I am, and I'm not that kind of person, and I always sort of suffered with confidence a little bit, to be honest. Do you think that's a female thing? I think a lot of it is. I'm not saying men don't get those confidence problems, but I think also of our generation, that we weren't of the generation where women were expected to be typists or anything, but I think probably still as well, women or girls don't get that enough praise, enough pat on the back, enough of a push to say you can do it, you are good enough. And I think everybody, men and women, need that, I think.
Absolutely, yeah.
Men tend to have the bravado, I think, and I think men probably pretend a lot better than women, actually.
I think that's interesting. I mean, I know certainly I've had during the first one I did, a chap who, in terms of bravado, in terms of the way he appears, really confident, massive personality, real character. But I mean, he's just actually written a book about his mental health problems and the pressures of that coming crashing down. So I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, because I think the confidence and bravado, they're clearly two different things.
Yeah, I think so, and I think men do have that bravado, and you don't know what's. I think that's why a lot of men have those mental health problems, is because they don't talk about it. Women are a lot better at talking about these things, you know. I do to a certain extent, but I still do try and sort of, you know, everything's fine, because you don't want, you know, people to think that you're not. But I think men are worse at talking about it.
I think just going back to what you were saying on social media, that the whole that pressure to feel as though things are going well, business-wise, you've got to all kind of feel as though things are going well, because if no one wants to use someone that's not busy.
I try and because I know, obviously with my clients, I know who's not doing well, because I can see it on paper, on black and white. And I try and talk to people and say, how are you doing? And, you know, and it's not just about numbers, it's about how you're coping. You know, and, you know, one young man I have as a client in particular, I do worry about him, because I know he has mental health struggles, and every time I see him, I want him to talk about things, because I know I'm not qualified, but I can listen. And I think that's half the battle. And I think if you do have your own business, you do have that sort of, to your friends, to your family, oh yeah, everything's going fine, because you don't want to be seen as somebody failing, really. And I think that's both genders, really. And I think I can't remember the statistic now, like sort of most small businesses don't make it past 5 years. Is that something possibly
like that?
I don't know what the statistic is, but that sounds about right. And I think it's difficult to, because in the first year you don't know what you're doing. I mean, do you really? I made loads of mistakes when I first started. I made loads of mistakes with advertising, with networking, with all that kind of thing.
Can I pause in there and ask you, just in terms of mistakes that you've made, is there anything that really stands out?
Well, I did things have moved on a bit since I started, really, even in 12 years, but I did the whole sort of leaflet drop. And I think I've still got loads of leaflets sitting there that I spent a lot of money on. And of course, with my business as well, not every door is going to be a business. So I wasted a lot of time, but I felt like I was doing something. And obviously at the time, I don't think anybody does it now, but newspaper advertising, you know, again, you do it and it just comes up with nothing. I mean, I think it depends what you do for a living. But for my industry, that's not going to do anything. So if you're starting up an accountancy practice, anybody, don't bother with those things.
There you go.
But that might work for some things, but not for mine. But it's really difficult. I still don't know what the best thing is for advertising your business. And I think as the business grows, recommendation has been fantastic for me. Google, you know, star ratings have been great, but I still don't know what the best thing is.
It is interesting, actually. I mean, I remember my first job, worked for a local newspaper, funnily enough, in advertising. Right. And we were obviously, I was part of the sales team. And you just thinking about the very, very different characters from the people in the sales team to the people in the accounts department.
Yeah.
And I think it's when you've got a bigger business and you can afford to be taking on or outsourcing a lot of that work. I mean, obviously, you get a lot of, you know, yours is kind of the first thing that gets outsourced. Like sort of for me, I do pride myself on doing my own VAT returns. Not so much now. got rid of the online portal where you could submit.
Yes.
I just got my head around that sort of
Yeah.
Excel spreadsheet, then put it in there and everything works. And now I'm sort of trying to work with other people's spreadsheets and the figures and stuff like that. You know about my nightmare with QuickBooks.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Zero all the way, people.
Yeah. There you go. Accountant's recommendation. Go for zero.
That would be my recommendation.
I didn't like QuickBooks. I did at first, but it's kind of like unless you're doing it their way, then well.
I think it's sorted for courses, isn't it? Some people like QuickBooks, but
it's but I mean certainly yours is an industry that gets outsourced. But I think what is interesting is like you don't really get many businesses that are kind of going the other way. Sort of someone coming to you and say, right, we will find you business. I suppose you've got search engine optimization specialists, marketing specialists, but
I think you can spend a lot of money and not achieve anything. That's the problem.
Yes.
And when you first start off in business, you feel like you have to be doing something. So something's better than nothing because it makes you feel better. But then when the phone doesn't ring or when you don't get those emails, you think, oh, God, what else have I got to do? You know, it's quite difficult. I was quite lucky as well that I worked, when I first started doing it properly, another small business who I was friends with, she was a school mum. Our kids were friends. And she helped me a lot because she was really good at all that sort of social media stuff and everything. And so she was very supportive. But it's really difficult to know which avenue to take. And as I say, it's different for every industry. So
I think you're right. There are a lot of chances out there. So, we can get you this. And like, I mean, if you follow that kind of thing, sort of on Facebook, your algorithms like picking up what you're looking for.
Yeah.
And I mean, and you're right. And again, I think going back to what I was saying to you, like sort of your personalities that are in sales, you've got just really good people who are just effective communicators. They're good at listening and they're good at getting business. But you've also within, that desk, that section of the office, you've got your con man as well, your chances.
And the ones who have got really great personalities aren't necessarily the ones that are great at, I'm thinking about accountants here, that are great at their job. So you might sort of see, you might see online that, oh yeah, fantastic, somebody's got a great video and they're talking about their business and they look great personality. They're probably not the ones that are going to be doing your accounts.
No.
And if they are, they're not necessarily good at doing your accounts, so it's difficult. I think to choose the right accountant, I think you've got to go on personalities really. Do you get on with that person? Do you trust them? Do you think they're going to give you good advice?
I think that's a crucial thing actually, because one of my friends who I'd asked advice about where to take my car, and he was chatting about he knows all the garages in the area without question, and he was saying it's like sort of basically sort of when you go, if you've got a one-man garage, that guy is going to be looking after your car, is going to have all that experience, and whereas if you go to a bigger company or even like the main dealers, now I'm not questioning anyone in particular's sort of a standards or anything like that, but the bottom line is your older sole trader is going to have a lot more experience than kind of the young apprentice or whatever that they're going to, like you say, the flashy adverts or, bring it to us, we've got this. It's like, it's younger, inexperienced people. Yeah. And I'm guessing I think that is the same with accountants. I know the bigger they are, they've maybe got sort of younger trainees that are maybe dealing with your
maybe
books.
It doesn't always follow, but, a lot of clients that come to me from another accountancy firm, and the general complaint usually with the previous accountant is that they're dealing with different people all the time. Yeah. And they just want that personal service. They want somebody who thinks they give a damn about what they're doing, rather than just somebody who's, a trainee. Or I think against trainees, I have an apprentice myself here. But you need that quality of service, but you also need that sort of, you need to build up a rapport, I think, with somebody. And, if you ring up, you want to speak to that person, or they'll come back to you, but you don't want to be speaking to 5 different people because you've got to repeat your story every time, don't you? You know,
it is frustrating. It is, and I will say it is always nice whenever I've rang you. It's like, oh, hi Barry, like there's a number saved in your phone. Which, like I say, I will be honest. When I rang you to arrange this, I was expecting to have to remind you who I was, because obviously, you know, you don't see everyone, all the clients that often, really, do you, I suppose?
No, some of them I do. It depends what we do for them. So some things we do more regularly, like VAT returns and things, we see people more often. But some we only see once or twice a year. Yeah. You know, and I'll be honest with you, sometimes I don't recognise them when they come to the office and have to be reminded. I think I'd better get people name tags, because I think I do have a problem with recognising people sometimes. Yeah, it's you know, obviously if you seeing people more, some clients I've had for a long time and I see them every 3 months, and they come in now and again in between to ask questions or email or whatever.
I think the next time I come in, I'm going to come in with my glasses off.
Oh, well, if you dye your hair, I will not recognise you. I'm telling you now. Especially with women,
from
if
the attractive shade of grey.
Hey, we're all going that way. But yeah, especially new clients, you know, and you've only met them once, and they come in 6 months later, and you think, What's your name? Remind me. But yes, you do build up a rapport with clients, and it is nice. That's what I like about the job, really. Yeah. I wouldn't want to build the company up so much that I didn't have that sort of, you know, personal element to it.
I mean, you mentioned you've got an apprentice now. How long as your apprentice? Because I mean, when you started on your own, how long in before you took someone on?
I mean, she's been with me 2.5 years now.
Right.
But it was only when I came to the office, I opened up the office, because obviously when you're working from home, you can't have people working for you, really. No. It's a bit more difficult unless you have somebody more experienced that they're working from their home as well, and then I didn't really want that. So that was one of the reasons of opening the office, was then I could think about having somebody to help me. And Alex is absolutely fantastic. You know, she's hopefully going to be passing her AAT this year, and
brilliant.
And yeah, we get on really well. So that's because you never know when you employ people, do you?
No.
So it was a bit of a risk. I did really think hard about whether I wanted to continue just on my own, but I just wanted to have that backup, really. And
yeah.
I think that's a bit of a comfort for clients as well, that if I'm off, somebody else in the office that can possibly deal with it.
So before she started with you then, because I mean, whilst you've said you're not the most confident in pushing yourself forward, you're a very sociable person and you get on with people. How did you find that lonely, sort of working on your own? Did you?
No. I quite like working on my own. Yeah. I'm not really that sociable, Barry. I just pretend.
Oh, well, you do a good job.
No, I am to some degree, but I think working on my own never bothered me. I'm quite a disciplined person as well, so working on my own, I think some people find it hard working from home, but I never had a problem with getting up at the same time every morning, getting to my desk at the same time.
The kids kind of help with that, though, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Dogs as well, you know, getting the dog out for a walk and things like that. And if I didn't have, you know, if I lived on my own or something, it would be quite different, I think. But you do get into that routine, don't you? It never worried me. The only thing that I do quite like, I mean, I love working with Alex, but also we can talk about issues as well, especially now she's a bit more experienced. Whereas I didn't have that before. I did have a friend who was an accountant, so I could speak to them. But it's more difficult when you're on your own. You've got nobody to talk something through, and I think that's quite important. Even if you find the answer just by talking about it. Yeah. When it's out of your head, it's easier, I think, to find a solution to a problem and talking things through. So that's been nice. But other than that, I never had a problem working on my own, really. But it has been nice getting the office, having Alex here, and expanding a little bit.
Yeah.
That's been quite a nice move, although that's a big step.
Was it stressful, like your first employee?
Yeah. Just getting the right person. I'd worked in companies where I was interviewing people before, and I knew what it was like to get the wrong person, and they'd come over great at interview.
Yeah.
And then they start work and you think, I've made a massive mistake. This person is not who I thought they were. And so I did worry about that. Yeah, definitely. And also because there's just two of us in the office, I had to get on with them.
Yeah, that could be very awkward.
It could, and so I had to employ somebody who, Alex was a bit older than the normal apprentice. She's still young.
Yeah.
But she wasn't an 18-year-old straight from school, and I have nothing against 18-year-olds, but I didn't really want to be chatting every day to somebody who could be my son's friend.
Yeah.
Because I know what they talk about, and it's not what I talk about.
No.
It's just things like that. And somebody who I felt could train at a good, decent speed, and I could get on with them. So yeah, it was a worry for sure, but I've been very, very lucky with getting the right person.
Well, yeah, I mean, she's been with you for 2.5 years, and that says something.
Definitely, and she seems happy to my face. She says she's happy. So yeah, it's it's like all these challenges when you're working for yourself. Like getting the office was a worry because that's a major expense.
Yeah.
That you didn't have before, and so yeah, it's having a little bit of bravery and a bit of thinking I either stay where I am or I've got to take a risk, and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out, but at least I tried. Yeah. But I think part of it with having your own business is I see clients who take that risk but don't when it doesn't work out, they're slow in recognising that and going backwards. I think you've got to be prepared to go backwards. Yeah. And then go forwards in a different way. And I've seen that a few times with clients, and they're not prepared to necessarily listen. They're just forging ahead, and sometimes it doesn't work out. I think it can be hard, like I say, if you've made a decision and you're ploughing on. But it is, because you get narrow-minded about it, don't you? And you think, well, what's everybody going to think if I go back to where I was before? I've told everybody how successful I've been, and I'm not quite getting the clients I'm getting, and it's interesting how other people's perceptions do matter so much, isn't it? I mean, it shouldn't. It really shouldn't, but it does. Yeah, I mean, for myself, even as someone who generally doesn't really care, like I say, part of what I do, standing on stage in front of like sort of lots of people, that doesn't faze me. But you've still got that sort of wider perception of people that you don't really know, a lot of whom you don't like, and it's like, why would... And I think it's true. I think as you get older, you don't care so much, because you realise people are not bothered. No. People aren't bothered whether you're successful or not. That's it. And when you're in your 20s, you think people are. Yeah. You try to not impress people, but you just... You want to put on your best self, don't you? Yeah, you do. And you want people to think, oh, she's doing all right. Yeah. She's but as you get older, you think, well, nobody gives a monkeys. No, and they don't. I mean, with the best one, I mean, generally speaking, I think people sort of want you to do well. Of course they do. They don't want you to do better than them. No. But, well, if you've got friends like that, you don't necessarily want them to be friends. Yeah. You want supportive people around you, and I think, again, as you get older, you realise that the people who... don't want you to be more successful than them, and not the people you want to be. They're not real friends. Kept at arm's length, yeah. Yeah, and the ones who catch you when you fall are the ones that you want as friends.
Absolutely.
And it takes a long time to learn that lesson, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of for anyone else that might be watching this that was thinking, we'll kind of chop this into two questions. So someone was thinking of starting on their own, because obviously you've got a wealth of experience and advice, and they could come, as indeed I have done, come to you for the service that you offer. In terms of someone starting up, what advice would you give to them? And then again, following on from that, if it was someone watching this thinking about going on their own as an accountant, what perhaps would you say to them? Assuming, of course, we're in a different location.
Yes, definitely. Not in concert. I think as far as somebody setting up generally on their own, I would say don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to not know anything and find out. I'd also recommend thoroughly going to see an accountant before you set up, because I think unless you have some knowledge, and there's some knowledge can be quite dangerous, that you need to know. Don't bury your head in the sand and think, oh, that'll take care of itself. It's good to know what taxes you've got to pay. Yeah. It might be a bit scary, but it's good to know these things, even if it is scary, before you start, and then it might alter some of the decisions that you make, in direction you go in and how you do things and what have you. But I would definitely suggest that. So even before you've started in business, or maybe when you've just started, because I think a lot of people set up in business and they think, right, I'm good at this. So I'm going to start up in business. I can do this. But then find that they've got to sell a lot of what they're making or to make ends meet. And they don't really think about the figures. And a lot of people don't want to think about the figures because they think it's scary, but it's not scary when you know. Yeah. I think knowledge is good. And I think a lot of people bury their head in the sand with tax, and it all sounds scary, but actually when you break it down, it's not really. And I think a lot of people start off in business and they go, oh, I'm not very good at numbers. But that's part of being a business person. Yeah. It's not just about what you're good at and what you're selling or what service that you're providing. It is about the money side. And if you rubbish with the money side, you might not succeed. No. So I think getting that knowledge, certainly, I would definitely recommend that. As far as accountants setting up in business, I'm probably not the best person to ask, because my business has grown so slowly, but that's the way I wanted it. It depends how you do it. I know somebody who's set up in the last few years, and he's really good on social media, and he's really career driven, and wants to set up as many branches as possible in a short space of time, and that's great. That works for him, and he's good at it. For me, that wouldn't have worked for me, because I like to know what's going on and be in control more. So it depends how you want to.
I think that's the nice thing though about your own business. It's like you've got that level of control, and if you want to like sort of reach for the stars, then fantastic, you can go for that. Yeah. If you're contented, and I think that's the thing. It's like the majority of people aren't going to be billionaires. That's just not the nature of.
Yeah, and it depends what you want out of your business. Do you want it as, just like the flexibility? If you've got kids, you might want it just as earning some money and having the flexibility. Fantastic. If you want to open up 10 shops in 2 years, fantastic. It takes different skills to do that, and it's all good. It just depends on your personality and what you want. And having a small business takes really different forms. It's,
Absolutely.
But I mean, our business, it's very much concentrated on the small business, not the big businesses. They're for other accountants to deal with. I like the small businesses. I like the sole traders or the small limited companies, and because you get that one-on-one, sort of service, and I do like that. And you find out their story, and it's not just about the numbers. It's definitely about the people as well.
I do wonder in a way if you've kind of answered my next question, right, which is going to be, what's the future for Mark Stanley Accountants?
Good question. I don't want to be a big company. I can see just the two of us working together for the next few years, and but I might change my mind in 6 months and employ somebody else. But I when you're in your 50s, I don't have that sort of ambition anymore. And I want to grow the business a little bit more. But I quite like the way it's going, so that's not a very interesting answer. But
I think it's kind of an appropriate answer though, because it's, for me anyway, it's good to have people like yourself that are, serving the communities very much with a kind of client in mind, like myself. And it's good to know that you've got people there. I think, like we were chatting earlier on about the mechanic that's there, and he's looking after your car. That he's not just like saying, "All right, that's knackered."
Well, like you were saying about the big garages, it's like the big accountants that they like the big clients because they've got the personnel to deal with them, and they want the big fees. And quite often, the small businesses get lost with those big accountants. I've seen it, where I used to work, and they up their fees, but they don't provide any better service. And I always wanted to sort of do the reverse and just provide a service, because I know I'm good at that, and I haven't got the staff to deal with big companies anyway. And I it's nicer with the smaller businesses, I think, and that's my experience anyway, is the small businesses.
Well, it's good to know that you're still going to be here.
Yes, I'm not going anywhere.
With a small business. And I will recommend, if you are looking for a small business accountant, Alison is very worthwhile. I trust her with my own accounts. The less said about them, the better. But Alison, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Great stuff.